Close your eyes for just a second. Think about the last time you were truly, deeply present. Not scrolling, not planning, not worrying about tomorrow or replaying yesterday. Just here. Can you remember it? Most people can't. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night. The thing that I think, deep down, you already know but haven't yet let yourself fully feel. Most of us won't understand what life is actually for until it's almost over. Not because we're foolish, not because we don't care, but because the world is very, very good at making the wrong things feel urgent, and the most important things feel like they can wait. This is the story of a man named Daniel, and in many ways, I think you'll find, it's also the story of you. Daniel was born hungry. Not hungry for food, hungry for more. More recognition, more success, more proof that his life meant something. It started young, the way it always does. A father who measured love in achievements, a mother who smiled brightest when the report card came home perfect, a world that applauded loudly whenever Daniel performed and went silent whenever he simply existed. So Daniel learned the lesson the world was teaching him. Your worth is what you produce. By 22, he graduated at the top of his class. By 25, he had a corner office with a view of the city that made him feel, for just a moment, like he had arrived somewhere. His friends called him driven, his family called him impressive, and Daniel called himself on track. He had a plan, a precise, beautiful, airtight plan. 30, director-level promotion, 35, VP, 40, his own company, 50, legacy. It was a good plan, the kind of plan that looks perfect on paper. The only thing Daniel forgot to plan for was living. The climb began in earnest. 14-hour days became normal, then 16, then somehow the line between working late and simply not going home began to blur. His desk became familiar in a way his apartment no longer was. The glow of his monitor at midnight became a kind of companionship. There was a woman named Sarah. She had a laugh like sudden sunshine, the kind that made strangers turn around just to see where it was coming from. She loved him in that rare, unhurried way that asks for nothing except presence. She used to leave little notes on the refrigerator, small things, silly things. Don't forget to eat something that isn't ambition today. At first, he thought it was charming. Later, he thought it was naive. Later, much later, he would think about those notes in the dark and feel something he couldn't name press hard against his chest. She left on a Tuesday. She didn't even fight. That's what haunted him most. She had simply run out of things to fight for. She packed quietly, hugged him gently, and said something he almost missed because he was half reading an email. She said,
"I hope you find what you're looking for, Daniel. I really do."
He watched her go from the window of his corner office, because even then he was at the office, and told himself it was for the best. The climb demanded sacrifice. That's what greatness cost. He'd read that somewhere. He believed it the way you believe things you need to believe. His daughter, Emma, was born 2 years later to a woman he married quickly and divorced quietly. He loved Emma. He did. He just loved her the way a man loves something he's certain will still be there after the meeting, after the quarter, after the deal closes. He missed her first steps. He missed her first word. He was there for her 5th birthday, but only for 40 minutes, and she'd asked him 3 times if he had to leave soon, and each time he'd said, "Not yet, sweetheart," in that tone adults use when they mean soon. At 43, Daniel got everything he wanted. His company closed a deal that made the business section of every major newspaper. His net worth crossed a number he'd written on a napkin when he was 26 in a late-night diner, slightly drunk and absolutely certain that this number would make him feel complete. It didn't. He sat in a boardroom filled with people shaking his hand and smiling and saying his name like it meant something monumental. And underneath it all, beneath the champagne and the congratulations, There was a silence so enormous it seemed to swallow the room whole. Is this it? The thought came without warning, quick and small, the way the most devastating thoughts always arrive. He pushed it down. He was good at pushing things down. He'd been doing it for 20 years. He ordered another bottle, laughed louder, stayed later. But the silence followed him home. It was there when he walked into his penthouse apartment, beautiful, immaculate, and empty in a way that no amount of expensive furniture could fix. It was there when he called Emma to tell her about the deal, and she said, "That's great, Dad," with the practiced warmth of someone who has learned not to expect too much from a phone call. It was there at 3 a.m. when he stood at the floor-to-ceiling window looking out over the city, all those millions of lit windows, all those millions of lives, and thought, "I have everything. Why does it feel like nothing?" The heart attack happened on a Wednesday. Not dramatic, not cinematic. He was alone in an airport lounge, flying to a meeting that, he would later be unable to remember, was about something that had seemed extraordinarily important. He woke up in a hospital with machines measuring his life in beeps and a doctor explaining things in careful, measured tones. And the first thing he felt, before fear, before relief, before anything else, was a profound and shattering stillness. The world had simply stopped. No meetings, no emails, no deals, no performance. Just a white ceiling, the sound of his own breathing, and time, slow, unscheduled, unproductive time, stretching out around him like an ocean. Emma came. She sat by his bed for 2 days straight, sleeping in the chair by the window, and when he woke in the night and saw her there, this young woman with her mother's eyes and her whole beautiful life ahead of her, something inside Daniel that had been locked for a long time broke open. He watched her sleep. He thought about every recital he'd missed, every dinner she'd eaten without him, every time she'd stopped mid-sentence on the phone because he could hear in his voice that he was multitasking, that she was background, that the work was foreground. Always. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel didn't push the feeling down. He let it come. He was 61 years old, lying in a hospital bed, and he was finally paying attention. A nurse named Gloria checked on him every morning, and one morning she asked gently how he was feeling, not medically, just, "How are you feeling?" And Daniel, who had not answered that question honestly in 40 years, said, "Like I've been running a race, and I've just realized I don't know what I was racing toward." Gloria nodded, the way people nod when they've heard the truth. She said, "Most people figure that out eventually. The lucky ones figure it out while there's still time to change direction." He thought about that for a long time. He thought about a Saturday morning when Emma was 7 and she had crawled into his bed at 6 a.m. He was already on his laptop and placed her small hand flat over the keyboard and said, "Daddy, can we just be bored together?" And he laughed it off and moved her hand and kept typing. Can we just be bored together? How had he not understood that was the whole point? How had he spent 30 years confusing urgency with importance, confusing productivity with meaning, confusing success with a life well lived? Daniel didn't become a different man overnight. That's not how it works. The patterns of a lifetime don't dissolve in a single revelation. But something shifted. He called Emma every Sunday, not to update her on his life, but to ask about hers, and then listen. Not half listen, not listen while scrolling. Listen the way you listen when you understand that this voice, this person, this moment is not a footnote to your real life. It is your real life. He took a trip he'd been postponing for 20 years. He sat on a quiet beach at sunset with no agenda and no device, and he just watched the light change on the water for an hour. And he thought, I have never done this before. I have been alive for 61 years, and I have never simply watched the light change on the water. He cried a little, not from sadness,
from the strange, complicated feeling of waking up. I don't tell you this story to make you feel guilty. I tell it to you because somewhere in Daniel's story, I suspect you recognized something, a choice you keep making, a presence you keep deferring, a person who deserves more of you than you've been giving, a moment you keep looking through instead of looking at. The meaning of life is not a destination you arrive at. It is not a number in an account, a title on a door, or a milestone on a plan. It is here. It is now. It is the person across the table from you tonight who needs you to put down your phone. It is the child who wants you to be bored with them. It is the sunset you haven't let yourself watch. It is the conversation that doesn't have a point, except that you love someone, and they are here, and so are you.
And time, as it turns out, is the only currency that cannot be earned back. Most people realize this too late. You don't have to be most people. The only question that matters now is simple. What are you going to do differently, starting today? Follow FactNest for more stories that could shape your life.